Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting of Health and Wellbeing Committee on Monday the 10th of June 2024. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photography, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use your microphone when speaking. So can we start with, on the agenda, the appointment of substitutes, please, Julian?
The substitute is Councillor Ali is substituting tonight for Councillor Richard Udall.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? I have to declare an interest. It's item number 8 on the Household Support Fund. Just to let you know that I work for a disability charity that is working with the County Council to distribute HSF vouchers to our service users. And do we have any public participation, Julian?
Chair, we don't have any public participation. We have got a speaker for the next but one agenda item.
Thank you. Let's go through the minutes of the last meeting, which was held a while back. I'll look at it, the 18th of March. Has everyone had a copy of the minutes and has been able to read them? If we go through page by page, please, can we just confirm that they're approved? Page 2, page 3, page 4. Is everyone happy with those and are happy for me to sign them as a true record? Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 5, we have a presentation by the Citizens Advice Bureau in Worcester, and we have Anne Limbert, who's come to present to us about the cost of living crisis and delivery of the Household Support Fund. Good evening, Anne. Thank you for coming. Are you aware to use your microphone?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for inviting us to speak to you tonight on what we're doing about the cost of living crisis. So, first slide, please. I might have to look at my notes. I might not be able to see it. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, so delivery of services in response to the cost of living crisis. So we're Citizens Advice Worcester and Herefordshire. We took over Herefordshire a few years ago, but this is about Worcester City. So these are the services that we deliver in Worcester City, and I put our contact details on the first slide, so you can use those to give to any of your clients or members of the public who you work with, and all this information is on the website as well. So next slide, please. So I'll have a look. I've done quite a few slides and I can whiz through some and, you know, ask questions as I go along. So I thought I'd look at what National Citizens Advice are doing, looking at it from the client perspective, what we can do and what help is out there. Next slide, please. So National Citizens Advice do a monthly briefing on the cost of living, and anyone can attend those. They are online, and anyone, you don't have to be a citizen's advice to attend those, and they are really interesting on the statistics and what they look at. So so from these briefings, you know, there's an unprecedented challenge out there for our clients during this time. And the national figures are reflected at local level with the Worcestershire Advice Network partnership figures, which are rising as well. So client issues are becoming more complex, more urgent and harder to solve, and traditional tools aren't working. And there's virtually no wriggle room now to budget. So like I've said, Citizens Advice deliver monthly briefings around the cost of living. Next slide, please. So the 5 key cost of living issues since 2014 have been personal independence payment, energy debts, charitable support and food banks. And charitable support and food banks have kind of gone through the roof in the last 10 years and certainly the last 3 to 5 years. And council tax arrears. And we record lots of detailed data, lots of profile data and all the issues. So we've got a really good case management system, so we do look at that. And since 2020, like I've said, these issues have been rising. Next slide, please. So prepayment meters, the total number of people, this is one of the big things, and the total number of people seeking help from Citizens Advice as they can't afford to top up their prepayment energy meter, and effectively having their supplies disconnected, has increased as follows over the last 4 years. So you can see the massive jump that we've had from 2019, that we had just over 2,000 clients, increasing year on year. September 2022 we had 18,000 clients, and December 22 we had 27. By that time we had 27,000. I think that should be 2024 actually, because I've added that in. So you can see that there's been a massive increase in people not being able to pay the prepayment meters. And they are at a disadvantage because they're not able to pay it over a year. They have to pay as you go when they're paying for the prepayment meter. So looking at the Citizens Advice Cost of Living Data Dashboard in May 2024, we continue to break unwelcome records in the number of people we've seen who can't afford to top up the prepayment meter. And in 2022 we saw more people who couldn't afford to top up the prepayment meter than the whole of the previous 10 years combined, as I've just shown on that slide. And then 2023 was even higher than 22, and 24, oh yeah, these are my figures now. 24, by April we'd already seen 14,000, that's nationally, and currently on track for similar numbers to 23. We helped a record number of people who couldn't afford to top up their prepayment meter in January 24. And clients with prepayment meters are the most vulnerable clients. So like I said, client issues are becoming more complex, more urgent, harder to solve. There's no wriggle room to budget. People are facing a living standards crisis. Energy bills are still piling pressure on people's budgets. People need warm, comfortable homes. And we need to tackle energy efficiency as well. If all homes were insulated to C standard, it would mean a saving of £950 per year. So families have a simple problem. Can their income cover their costs? Is there enough coming in for heating, eating and the rest? Incomes and outgoings just don't add up. Can they afford to live their lives, or does every penny go on surviving? And people in receipt of benefits don't have enough to live on, so having to submit an income expenditure is a paper exercise when we're looking at applying for grants for people. If people have got benefits, then they've not got enough coming in, you know, regardless of what they need to spend it on. So there are obvious health consequences. Financial difficulties takes its toll on mental health. 50% of people with debts have mental health issues, and that's kind of like it's a bit of a chicken and egg. If people have got mental health problems, then that causes them to have debt problems, and vice versa. They're constantly budgeting, there's no room for luxuries, and it affects sleep and concentration, and it's hard to make decisions. For people who have difficulties with basic day-to-day tasks like getting up and making a meal, their issues are exacerbated. And we need to encourage people to seek help as early as possible. And one of the things, because I did do a presentation in 2022, I think, following at the dementia meeting, and looking at that, so for people with dementia or looking after someone with dementia, then we need to ask what they need, break it down into small chunks, set the scene for the next appointment, and it's all about being realistic. So advice is not one size fits all. So the dementia is just an example. So there, lots of other people in different circumstances where we need to look at their actual circumstances. So looking at Worcester Citizens Advice, one of the things is that we're seeing an escalation in food bank vouchers. So we're the biggest agency for Worcester Food Bank, and it equates to 2/3 of our daily ringback calls in the generalist advice service. And as I can demonstrate in the table on the next slide, it's been increasing quarter on quarter. We have had fewer requests. If you want to go on to the next slide. So you can see how much it's escalated. So it's rising quarter on quarter. We did have fewer requests for food bank vouchers in January, March, from October to December. But I think that's because the government cost of living payment of £299 was paid in February 2024. So that accounts for not as many people requiring a food bank voucher. But it was only 17 fewer vouchers fulfilled than last quarter. So you can see, from there, how many vouchers are issued, how many are fulfilled, total people fed, how many adults and how many children. And we work quite closely with the food bank. We do get funding from Trussell Trust and from the food bank themselves to engage with people who are needing to use the food bank. And if you've not visited the food bank, I would encourage you to go and visit the food bank. They're an absolutely fantastic organisation. It's run like a well-oiled machine. It's really impressive. And then you think, but why have we got this in this day and age? But they do an absolutely marvellous job. So the services that we've got that people can be referred into, so we've got the generalist service, we've got debt advice, money management advisors, and 2 of our money management advisors are funded through the Trussell Trust, through the food bank. We've got benefits advisors, we've got Smart Move, Macmillan, and PensionWise. And then next slide, looking at the generalist services, we've got a county-wide free phone advice service. So that's unlike a hunt group. So it will go to the nearest one or the next nearest one across Worcestershire. We've got a call and text ringback service, and I think there are only 4 in the country who do that. No one else in Worcestershire does it. And it means that we're not missing phone calls, or if people can't get into the office, so they send a text and we call them back, and that can be an easy route in for clients, because rather than having to cold call us and explain the problem, they can just send a text and then wait for someone to ring them back. We do 3 drop-ins per week, which obviously is pretty popular. When we went back to drop-ins after lockdown, we were quite surprised we surveyed the people who were doing the drop-ins, and a lot of people, it was single people, single parents, people who had their mental health impacted through lockdown and needed to get out. We do appointments over 5 days, so we are open over 5 days for appointments, and we've also got a regular bespoke British Sign Language advice service that we do regularly on a Monday morning. And I've just had a recent meeting with ASPI, whose members have got autism, to look at securing funding for a bespoke advice services on their premises, because it's difficult for them to be able to come and wait in the drop-in service. So we are looking at doing that as well. So anywhere where we see that there is a need for vulnerable clients, then we will try and accommodate them. Next slide. So the additional funding that we've had to look at providing services during this cost of living crisis is that we had funding from Worcester City Council through the task and finish funding, and through that we had a half-time advice session supervisor to facilitate a further drop-in day. So that's why we went to 3 days, and to train volunteers. And since that funding ended at the December 23, then we've committed to continue the three drop-in sessions and the 5 days a week generalist appointments. The HSF5 will continue the core generalist services in place, so that's through Worcester City Council. So HSF5 is this year April to September. And because we get funding through councils, then it means, you know, that we're a stable and viable business. So we are going to be here to be able to deliver projects. So then it means that we are able to secure more project funding. So we did get some National Citizens Advice funding for a full-time equivalent post to respond to the ring back and text and call back, which that was for 12 months, and we are hoping to continue that. Trussell Trust full-time money management advisor, we've got 3 years, which was 22 to 25. We've just got an additional 30 hours post through Trussell Trust, and we've also got some hours from Worcester Food Bank to issue food bank vouchers, because we're issuing 600 vouchers a quarter, which is really difficult. And it's not like a deli counter where you just give someone a ticket, so you just give someone a voucher. It's, you know, we do the holistic exploration, look at the situation, might we need to engage with them and refer them into our internal services or other external services. And through Worcestershire County Council, we've got a half-time money management advisor to work with referrals from Acton Energy until June. Now that's been extended to June 25. We've got 4 half-time posts in the county through the 4 local citizens advice. And then, like I said, we've got the 3 money management advisors engaging with Worcester Municipal, Food Bank and Acton Energy clients. So they'll do an income expenditure, benefits check, maximising income, helping them to apply for benefits that they might be eligible for, budgeting, so explaining priority and non-priority, asking people to do a spend diary if they're not sure where the money's going, and we do internal and external referrals for specialist advice. We also refer into DWAS, the Discretionary Welfare Assistance Scheme, and we work closely with the City Council to submit applications. Worcester Municipal Charities, they funded a full-time money management advisor, and we submit applications into them. And the Fuel Bank Foundation, we don't get any funding to do this, but it's something that we need to do because they issue emergency energy vouchers provided to prepayment meter customers living in fuel crisis, so ensuring that they're getting at least 10 days of energy, heat, light and power. And that was, during the winter months, that was £89, and it's been reducing, and it's now that we're in June, it's £31 for a crisis. And when people apply for that, that is issued on the same day. If it's after 3 o'clock, it's the next day. and then from Worcestershire County Council with HSF, through the Worcestershire Advice Network Partnership, which we lead on. For HSF 5, we're continuing with the £75 vouchers. So that's for, and these are cash vouchers. Pensioners, including those in receipt of pension credit, people with disabilities and long-term health issues, there are no age restrictions on that. Carers with no age restrictions. And then we're also doing households who are off-grid get a £100 one-off payment to help with fuel costs. There is an income limit, but discretion can be used on the particular circumstances of people. So if it's a pensioner that's over the income limit, but they are actually paying full rent or something, then we use discretion on that. And we've used the Which report, how much will you need to retire, to look at the income limit on that. And then obviously there's other help at district level with HSF 5 across the county. I'm not sure what I'm doing for time. I've got a case study which I'd not put on the slide. So this is a couple in the 70s, unaffordable energy costs and potential debt. They've been making do, but regular essential costs have been eaten into their savings more rapidly than they expected. So they're in receipt of state pension, pension credit and adult DLA, and they've got £3,500 in savings. The homeowners, but their house is drafty and expensive to heat. And despite having health conditions, they're not putting the heating on to avoid costs. And that's what a lot of people have been doing. They've not been putting the heating on. And they've got a monthly deficit of around £100. So what we did is they automatically were eligible for 3 £75 vouchers. So there's a cap on that of 3 vouchers per household. But because the pension age and they've got one of them's got disability, well, they've both got disabilities, but there's a cap on the 3. So they were referred into the money management advisor, who applied for the Acton Energy one-off grant of £300, and then to look at the government home heating improvement scheme. Home visits being set up with Acton Energy to complete the necessary forms to look at insulation and a new boiler. We looked at the eligibility for council tax support and identified potential backdated payment and help with the application form for that. And this would increase their monthly income by £130, so then that would bring them out of deficit. Giving them advice on energy tariffs, so a more stable fixed tariff, apply to the water suppliers social tariff, and discussions around health and difficulties claiming disability benefits, so referral into one of our benefits caseworkers for support for claiming. So that meant that the debt build-up's been avoided, and improve their mental health with regarding the finances and the worries. So it's like there's a lot of things that people are eligible for, but you know they're not aware of that. A lot of people that we see are in receipt of universal credit, but they're having deductions for one reason or another, so they're not getting the full universal credit. And this particular case is a couple in the 70s, but what we found is usually, especially with the Acton Energy, that the age range of 20 to 59 is higher than the over 60s. So then the Worcestershire Advice Network Partnership, we're made up of 7 partners, we're the lead, and it includes the 4 local citizens advice in Worcestershire, 2 Age UKs and Dial. We were awarded a 5-year tender in 2023, so that's now running for the next 5 years. Collaboration is key to deliver a county-wide service standard, and we work really well together, the 7 partners. We have ReferNet, which is a county-wide referral system, and any organisations can apply to use ReferNet, so they're able to refer into the other partners and the other organisations on that. And we just getting a new funded project, the Community Information and Signposting Service is what we're calling it. This is money from the county council. So we're going to cover all 6 districts. So it's about awareness in the community, encouraging people to seek help as early as possible, and ensure residents know where they can get help. And then from our stats, and this is Worcester City clients only, we've advised and assisted in 23-24 just over 4,000 unique individual clients. We've advised them on over 17,000 advice issues. We've completed over 23,000 activities with or on behalf of clients. We've obtained total financial gains of almost 2.5 million for clients over 12 months. And of those clients, 49% of clients were disabled or had a long-term health condition. And the ethnicity makeup is 86% white and 14% ethnic minorities, which is higher than across Worcestershire or in Worcester. And our main advice issues were benefits tax credits and universal credits made up 36% of those. Charitable support and food banks, 20%. Like I said, that's risen over recent years. Debt, financial services and capability, 15%. And housing, 11%. Has anyone got any questions?
Yeah, any questions at all? Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So I didn't catch your name. Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much. I've got 3 questions. I just want to preface them with, a thank you really for the amount of work that you're doing. I think the stats at the very end about how many people you've helped, and helping them access £2.5 million worth in financial benefits, for want of a better word, is absolutely incredible to do that within 1 year. So thank you very much for all you're doing. I think arguably the most standout statistic from your presentation was about the prepayment meters. So from 2019, we've got 2,200 people who had their energy switched off effectively. And in a 3-year period, 10 times that amount had their energy switched off. It's absolutely incredible. So I've got 3 questions. I think I'll ask them, in turn. First question, and sorry if you already answered this one, but how specifically did you help people who had their prepayment meters switched off? And I've got another 2 questions after that, if that's okay. But the first one is, how did you help people with the prepayment meters?
All right.
What did you do?
So we would look at their situation overall and see whether look at income maximisation, look at what benefits they might be entitled to, so we can increase their income. Look at the income expenditure to see whether we can do anything there. Where, if people have got non-priority debts, can we ask for an arrangement so they're not paying as much for their debts? But also we've got DWAS, so we can put an application into DWAS for energy vouchers, and also the Fuel Bank Foundation, so we can look at getting them a voucher from there as well. So
that comes within the £2.5 million that you've helped people get hold of. Yeah. Grand, thank you. So the second one was about the half-time advice session supervisor that the City Council funded until December last year. Do you know how much, perhaps I should know the answer to the question, how much did the City Council allocate to that advice session supervisor, and how many people did they help?
Task and finish, was it 20,000? Yeah, 20,000, so that was 20,000. And I'm not sure that we can break it down to how many. The supervisor then is supervising the session, and it goes into training of the volunteers and recruitment of volunteers. So I'm not sure that I can break that down. But we can have a look at that, see. We can pro-rata that on the supervisors that we've got and, you know, the people that we've helped. So that's something
To be reinstated in an ideal world. So, you know, we want the City Council to look back at that and say, can we fund it again? Because they're clearly...
Well, one of the things is that we have got some HSF5 funding, 6 months, so that'll be used to do that as well. So yeah, that would, you know, that would be good if that could continue.
Oh, thank you. And may I, Chair, just ask one more? Is that okay? Thank you. So last one, honestly. You said that an energy efficiency C standard would save someone about £950 a year. Now, Act on Energy say on their website that they've helped people in low energy efficient bands such as F and G to move down into more energy, or move up into more energy efficient bands. Do we know if Act on Energy has helped anyone move to or make their home become a standard C? And if not, do we know how much we're saving someone if, for example, they move from a G to an F in terms of money?
Yeah, that's a question that I can ask Act on Energy, actually, because we do work closely with them, and they attend the district HSF meetings, and they're funded through HSF. And, you know, the County Council fund the 4 part-time money management advisors across the county. So that is a question that I can go and ask and come back to you, make sure that you get those answers. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? Lynn, thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Anne. It was my invitation because Anne is just such a fount of knowledge on the benefit system, and I think, you know, what's really clearly come through there, one is just the escalating levels of need and the complexity around all the different systems and what you can claim from where and what the criteria are. You're not reaching, I suppose it's a kind of a sense of how many people in need actually are being reached, and how many of them need that help and support to map their way through the system. That's always kind of my worry, that I mean, it's absolutely brilliant doing the sort of text and call back, but there are people who, you know, don't have access to the internet, and actually, you know, the cost of a phone call can be a problem. At kind of what points in their journey do people come to you, and how do we reach the others?
Yeah, actually, because we don't always know, you know, who we can't reach. We do through, through all the work that we do, actually, we do try to reach the seldom seen and the, you know, more vulnerable clients. Well, we can look at, we operate advice line across the county, and we can look at the calls that aren't answered, but I'm not sure it's that sophisticated to know whether they're repeat calls or not from the same people. We can only do what we can do, really, with the resources that we've got. We have, like I said, the figures that I've given, the just over 4,000 is just Worcester City. So anyone with a Worcester City postcode. Overall in 23-24 we did advise 14,000 people. That's over Worcester City and Herefordshire. So it's people who we're also advising who might not have a Worcester City postcode. But yeah, we're never going to meet the need, are we? But we can just do what we can do and look. And like I said, it's really important to get core funding from councils. So that means that we're, you know, a stable and viable business. So it shows with other projects that we are going to be here and we can deliver those projects. And we've just secured, actually, which I've not put on, we've just secured 5 years, which is £500,000 from the Access to Justice Fund for a full-time benefits, an additional full-time benefits caseworker in Worcester and a full-time benefits caseworker in Herefordshire, although it's only going to be an additional half-time in Herefordshire because we're using that money to fund an existing half-time person that we've got, and their funding's coming to an end. So sometimes when we are securing more funding, it's just to continue to do what we're doing rather than it being additional.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say thank you as well. I particularly value the fact that you're working collaboratively with so many other organisations. That's invaluable. And I'm particularly pleased to hear that you're going to be working with the charity ASPI, because when you talk about hard to reach clients, I can imagine, just from my knowledge and my work with special educational needs young people, I know that they're probably the people who, the last place they want to come is to citizens' advice. So thank you for that. I think that's really important that you're doing that.
Yeah, I had a meeting with Taylor last Monday, and I've arranged for us to do a presentation on benefits to their members, and also looking at, even though we are stretched, looking at doing an advice session on their premises. That's kind of looking at the goodwill of a volunteer who might want to do an additional shift. We don't want to lose people, you know, from our drop-ins and telephone service. So it's just trying to accommodate that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody else? Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a case, I think my ward probably provides an unfair amount of the casework that you deal with. I've had a case particularly recently which caught my attention, where a universal credit recipient had an unexpected delay in the payment of his benefit, which landed him in arrears, which he was then stuck paying off for a while. You mentioned particularly that there is an increasing complexity in the cases that you're dealing with. Is this sort of situation typical? And what would you say is sort of the profile of those complexities that you're dealing with? Thank you.
Yeah, it is typical for anyone who's in receipt of universal credit, and especially because when you first apply for universal credit, there's a 5-week waiting time. So then they will offer a loan to tide you over the 5 weeks, so straight away you're in debt, and then when you do start getting your benefit, then you're paying it back straight away. You know, so yeah, I did bring a list of the wards actually, so from top to bottom I'll just do the top 5 is Cathedral, Warndon, St John, Gorse Hill, Nunnery, Rainbow Hill. Yeah. Yeah, so it is. Warndon Parish North, is it? I can hardly read it, sorry. St Peter's is the second bottom. Still high numbers though. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions at all? Councillor Denham.
Yeah, just to get is universal credit, if it's paid in full and without deductions, actually enough to live on? No, you're shaking your head. So it's a system entirely designed to fail and to disadvantage people as it currently is?
Yeah, it's not enough for people to live on, and especially with escalating costs with food and heating, energy. It made a big difference during lockdown when people in receipt of universal credit got the additional £20, and then they took that £20 did make a difference to people, and then they took that £20 away. So yeah, it's not enough to live on. It's, people are surviving. Sometimes it's not enough to survive on.
Councillor Kimberley.
I'm being greedy. I'm getting 2 in almost back to back. one of the impressions I've come away with, having spoken to some of my residents, is that there is a proportion of people who are keen to access work and to get into employment, but are finding that the process of applying for benefits and receiving and just chasing up the things that they're owed winds up effectively becoming a full-time job and precludes them from actually seeking work. I wanted to get your view of whether that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I think it is. It does become a full-time job for people. And then because of the universal credit, you can work and claim universal credit. But it's, you know, it's difficult for people if they've not got full-time hours and then they're claiming universal credit as well. And if they're on, you know, 0 hours contract and they're working different hours each month, then it messes up the system, so it is really difficult for people to get into work. Difficult for people who have got disabilities, so might want to work, but because they can't fully come off benefits, because they can't earn enough to come off benefits if they've got disabilities, but the permitted work hours is something like 12 hours a week, and so if they're working more than 12 hours a week, they need to work at least 37 hours a week and earn 28,000 to be able to fully come off benefits, so that, you know, they want to work but they can't.
Are we done? Thank you. I would just like to say, Anne, thank you. The continuing attack on the most vulnerable in our society is just simply so frightening. And the numbers that are being supported by Citizens Advice is just staggering. It really is. And thank you for everything that you do at Citizens Advice. The crisis just continues to unfold and escalate. So I think we'd all here would like to say, you know, thank you so much, and thank you for coming this evening. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone's got any other questions, you can always contact me. And the information's up there on letting your clients know where to come.
So we're now moving on to agenda item 6, the Q4 and annual performance report for 2023-2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just introduce the report, and there are others here who are better able to answer questions than me, but this is the final report for this calendar year, this municipal year. This has 4 projects on this one, 3 of which now, it's pleasing to see they're all green. 3 of them are considered that a substantive element of that work has been done, so they've been moved on to business as usual, as we'll come on to the next scorecard later. And as far as the KPIs are concerned, most are going well. There are a couple that's tracking a bit slowly, and the one at the bottom there, the red one, the number of exercise by prescription referrals is due to that particular scheme being closed. I think they're now moving on to another scheme. I think there are detailed reports against each of the KPIs, so if there are further questions, then happy to take them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Chair. This is an increasing concern that young people leaving care system between 16 to 25 years old are not getting the service, the care they need, or the support they need. The only accommodation they have is YMCA. Are we monitoring the support we give to them?
Yeah, I suppose that doesn't directly relate to any of the KPIs on the score sheet, but I suppose to offer some assurance, we do work closely with Worcestershire Children's First. We have a 16 and 17-year-old protocol as well as a care leaver protocol to ensure the journey is sort of mapped and there isn't a gap in provisions. So we accept applicants onto the housing register in advance of their 18th birthday to ensure they're registered and there isn't a lag in them being able to secure alternative provision. We try wherever possible to identify supported accommodation the provision of which is currently contracted from Worcestershire Children's First. So I suppose the answer is yes, we do, but we don't manage the contract or directly own that. That sits with Worcestershire Children's First.
Councillor Kinsley.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, I think it's a related question. So based on your answer, you may or may not be able to answer this one either. I was just wondering whether you knew what the barriers were in terms of young people taking up the support from on-site advocacy, because, you know, as a colleague noted, it's not, you know, not doing terribly well with its targets, and what is getting in the way of achieving more there. I don't know if you can help.
Thank you, Chair. I sought an update from on-site advocacy in advance of committee, and thanks to Councillor Kinsley for sort of pre-raising the question. I think what I've been informed is that on-site are increasingly finding that the complexity of cases, which has already been mentioned tonight, has probably taken them a little bit by surprise. There are probably many cases they are dealing with which are complex, which are not quite accessing the sort of formal level of commissioning or sort of children's social care criteria. And obviously they still owe families and young people a duty of care. So they can't just take a case to a certain level. They have to stick with that case until it's, you know, until it's safe and it's been dealt with. So I just think it's taking longer to deal with cases, and therefore that's causing a bit of a backlog. So that's the general reason.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Lib Dems are increasingly concerned that the government are not increasing funding in line with inflation and the impact this is having on the most vulnerable members of society. We're particularly concerned about the cutting of grants for people coming home from hospital. What other services might be repurposed to enable us to provide some help to these vulnerable people?
So, as part of the Council's housing assistance policy, we set out the provision that we provide through our Better Care Fund. That's circa £750,000–800,000 a year. So that's not just disabled facilities grants. That's things like ceiling hoists, housing adaptation. Tom can talk a bit more in detail on some of the various streams. And we will review our housing assistance policy in the spring and bring that to members. But that's the money the City Council has within its control. Anything other than that would sit with the County Council possibly, and there would be national schemes as well. But what we have available to us is set out within the housing assistance policy. But Tom may just want to cover off some of the other schemes we deliver, just in some summary detail.
Yeah, I mean, we do provide a hospital discharge grant through the Better Care Fund, so that enables individuals to safely be discharged from hospital and prevent them staying any longer than is necessary. I mean, the budget is under some pressure, as we took to a committee last week. But we do have, and we have discretionary availability of grants to enable a bit more flexibility about the approach that we take. But that is a relatively small amount in comparison to the potential need that the District Council has control over.
Any other questions? Councillor Denham.
Thank you. There's a lot in here, and as always with all the performance reports, there's a lot of work and information sat behind it. I just kind of wanted to know that the Child Poverty Task and Finish Group, we have received the final report, I know, and a lot of good work was achieved with that, and that was something that was initiated several years ago. It's a kind of sad reality, isn't it, that it's now treated as business as usual, and as we've heard from CAB, how huge the poverty need is in the city. And just kind of continuing on that theme, then I've got one other question. So the numbers helped through the Household Support Fund, was like a sort of massive escalation through the year. So the final quarter, the number is just an astonishing number of individuals. Or just kind of an explanation that sits behind that, if you see what I mean, as to how we spent it changed during the year, or it kind of ramped up in terms of people knowing what we could do and how to access it.
Yeah, it's probably a combination of a few things. So the number of awards is the total. So the figure quoted is the total number of awards. So that may be the same person that's received duplicate awards for the various different elements of the household support fund. So where a household becomes aware of the scheme, which is something we've actively tried to promote, they may then benefit from multiple awards. So an energy voucher, food voucher, access to the free school meals during holiday periods. I can't quite work out quickly enough in my head whether or not that correlates with the summer holidays, which is when we would have issued free school meals to households during that period, which may have seen an escalation in numbers. Quarter three, would that have been quarter three? No. Tail end of September, so that might have been as they got processed through, so that might be why there was sort of double between quarter two and quarter three. But we can look into the detail a little bit more if you want some further information about that. But it's probably a combination of a number of things that have led to that increase in awards.
So is the 12,000? So is the graph a cumulative total? Yeah. So by the end of the year, 12,000 individuals or individual access to the scheme, which, you know, I mean, at one level there's a huge amount of funding, but that's kind of £22 per intervention, I calculated, and at that level it's actually quite a modest sum that is enabling an individual or a person to keep their head above water for a bit longer. But yeah, I mean, it's another measure, isn't it, of the level of need within the city. Thank you. Then my question was around the other question. Number of rough sleepers engaged with outreach services. So MAGS currently has, at the time of the report, 2 out of 3 posts vacant. So is that being resolved? Because obviously if that's an ongoing situation, that's a concern.
Yeah, that is being resolved. I think one of the posts may be filled or due to be filled imminently. It probably sounds worse than it is, in that we've got a very strong partnership around rough sleeping generally. So there's a number of other services, they're not necessarily directly commissioned through the City Council, that provide outreach provision. So during any reduction in service, then they've been stepping in. So we haven't seen a significant impact in the reduction by having those vacancies within the team. They have had some difficulty recruiting. It is a very challenging area of work, challenging role. It has to have a lot of flexibility, obviously, to meet the needs of the client group. But they've obviously been working closely with them to try and to get people back into post to meet that need.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of rough sleepers and emergency accommodation, what are the criteria? So why might somebody be refused emergency accommodation if they're being told they don't meet the criteria? What are the criteria? Do you know?
It'll probably relate to their priority need. So if they don't have a priority need, they won't necessarily be eligible for temporary accommodation provided through the City Council. We will have sort of no second night accommodation, so no second night out accommodation where they can directly access emergency accommodation, but that's fairly limited in the amount of provision that's available. So where the sort of off-the-street accommodation is at capacity, it would then fall to the statutory duty on the local authority as to whether we are able to provide alternative temporary accommodation. So we can't provide that to everybody that may be homeless, and that's where the priority need and the homeless legislation kicks in. Who meets a priority need is probably a bit complex to get into right now, but there's various tests that we have to apply as to whether somebody has a priority need.
Councillor Kinnersley.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the Kipax Bridge situation. Hopefully this is the right place to do that. Firstly, the reports in the, earlier on in the year of, I think it was the steel manufacturers going into liquidation, and I just wondered how that was impacting on the delivery of the project. And then secondly, I'd be very keen to maybe with the other West Worcester councillors to meet maybe the contractors or other staff on site just to sort of understand the project better. And do I contact them directly, or can that be facilitated through the City Council? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Certainly a site visit can be organised. It's a county council delivered project, as members will be aware, and we do have representation on the project team. So I've been assured that yes, a visit can be arranged following the general election. You're quite right. One of the contractors did go into administration. A new contractor has been appointed and is starting on site this week with welders and fabricators. There should be some lifting across the river towards the end of the month. So substantially the programme's still on track. There will be some variations, but a new programme should be agreed, I think, at the project meeting tomorrow.
Any Councillor Sadiq.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is on page 19, exercises by prescription raffles. We have noticed numbers of exercise raffles is going down. Please, can you explain about why this is? Do you know if type 2 diabetes is increasing in the city? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think as Shane mentioned in his presentation, the project was halted during last year because of the low numbers. So we've changed focus now of the project, and the proposed committee scorecard for next year picks up that new project. So we can provide some more information on how the Diabetes Unlocked project went, and we've reported previously some of the barriers around accessing that. It certainly helped quite a few people, and some of the feedback we had on the project was positive. But I've got no further information on that one tonight. And in terms of the rates of type 2 diabetes, that's something that we would need to consult with primary care network colleagues on, and we can bring that back to you as well.
Any further questions? No? Okay, in that case then the recommendation is that the Health and Wellbeing Committee notes the Council's Q4 and annual performance for 2023-2024 and the performance reporting framework. Are we happy to note that? Yes, thank you. Next, we're moving on to agenda item 7, the proposed committee performance scorecard for 2024-2025. Shane, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a continuation of the discussion that we started at the end of the last year. And in the light of the feedback that we received from that, we've resolved to keep the structure largely the same, although in many cases we're moving more towards annual indicators rather than ongoing ones. For this committee, they're all quarterly ongoing indicators. And secondly, to try and just rationalise them so that there is a greater relationship between the projects that we've got on the scorecard and the indicators themselves. So the indicators there to help us understand how well those projects are progressing. So in this case, on page 23, as I mentioned earlier, so 3 of the actual projects have now been removed from the scorecard because they've become business as usual. So we continue to monitor those and watch progress against them, but 2 new ones are being added. one around accessibility in Worcester. So this is building on work we were doing before in terms of trying to see how accessible the city is and the roles that we can play in terms of supporting that. So there's strategic developments there which we want to talk through with the committee over the coming year. And then just more in terms of how financially we're continuing to support the impact of the cost of living crisis and for those in financial hardship. So what's the extent of our engagement in that and the degree to which that's continued. Of course, we know that the Household Support Fund is coming to an end. We've only got 6 months worth of money in respect of that. So we've got to think how, what impact is that going to have and how can we address that? And in terms of the key performance indicators, here there are 2 new ones, but they are in fact replacing ones which are more directly related to how the department measures progress on this. So we're looking at the number of people sleeping rough on a single night at the bottom of page 22, and overleaf, the number of rough sleepers supported into accommodation during the quarter. So that's data which is currently captured under the existing ones around how we accommodate people, transition them into support. So they're counting the similar things, but we're just matching the data which is collected by DLUC. Otherwise, there are a couple of others that are being removed. So the number of young people referred to into one-to-one walk and talk mentoring, and number of rough sleepers engaged. Oh, sorry, the one at the bottom. The number of disabled people living independently through home adaptations has been transferred to Communities Committee, where there's a continuing responsibility for that one. Okay, so we have a more focused scorecard for next year. Again, if there are questions from members in terms of how that's been developed and things that they would like to change. This is an ongoing conversation. It's not set in stone. These are the proposals which are brought forward to the committee's consideration. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Sian, did you want to come in at all at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to provide a bit more context. Though Shane's done a very helpful introduction about what this Accessible Worcester item might be for the coming year, and how we might look at that as a project within this committee's oversight. So members will be aware that we are into year 3 now of the Council's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy. And some of you will be aware that when we reported on our plans for year 3, which as I say, we've now started, we said that posing and answering the question, how accessible is Worcester, should be a priority action for year 3 of the strategy. And it seems appropriate that the Health and Wellbeing Committee would sponsor and oversee that piece of work during this year, because, okay, it isn't, a lot of these things are place-based, but it's not exclusively a place-based issue. It is a universal challenge. And I suppose I just wanted to go back to Michael Oliver's social model of disability. Those of you who are familiar with this already, this is about disabling barriers. Disability is society's problem. Society creates the barriers. So asking the question, how accessible is Worcester, is consistent with Worcester City Council's commitment in the strategy to be an excellent local leader in equality, diversity and inclusion. That doesn't mean Worcester City Council can solve all the problems that it identifies, but it's consistent with other things we've done under the EDI strategy to convene the conversation and be willing to hear what people have got to tell us. This very much feels like an area of activity that we need to prioritise in a kind of systematic and, if you like, conversational way. We've got projects underway, but we need that really quality and rich and deep level of engagement with people for whom finding Worcester inaccessible is their lived experience. So we've talked with Chair and Vice Chair about how we might tackle this as a project for this coming year. And just in terms of a sort of structural and thematic approach, how accessible is Worcester? First of all, if we are a local leader, we should set out what we already do and what we have already done. So what's Worcester City Council's contribution? We should also set out what we think we can do better. And that's, again, the way we've been trying to develop some of our work around inclusion, is to offer ways in which we think we can do better. So, and then we need to build our networks both with our partner organisations in the city, our charities, our community champions and our customers. We have a number of networks, but we need to consolidate them, and lots of people have individual networks, and we need that rich picture across the council. And then we need to learn by doing. Again, that's been a theme of our strategy so far. We need to work on a few focused projects and questions together. So a task-based approach. So for example, street furniture in the city, and the provision of street furniture, and when it creates a barrier and when it's helpful. Similarly, we have the Worcestershire tourism strategy has a commitment in there about accessible tourism and understanding what that means and what that could mean for Worcester, and linking that with Worcester Bid. And another example would be inclusive play projects, as we know, which the PED committee is looking at. There's probably more to do to ask people about that. We've got active travel projects underway, and how we design our active travel has a massive impact on whether the public realm is accessible or not. And those are just a few examples. There's also something for me around privacy and dignity, and the progress we've made in terms of changing places facility and bespoke sanitation, but more things we can probably do. So those are just examples of getting into some specific projects to work with people to answer some very particular questions about how accessible is Worcester. And then with some of that information to hand, it would be really good, and we've talked about this before in terms of year 3 for our EDI strategy, to convene a conference and perhaps a series of conversations with partner organisations and customers to share and learn. And undoubtedly that will be then something that leads into further work and further actions, and undoubtedly we won't be able to solve all the problems it will throw up, but at least we're listening and very much engaged in the process. So I'd be grateful for the committee's views. That's a sort of a simple sequence of steps we could take, but the culmination of which would be a bit of a campaign, and most definitely some sort of conference with some online sessions as well as in person to make it more inclusive to meet people's needs and requirements. Chair, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very exciting project that's going to be going forward. Are there any questions at all from the committee? Councillor Lawrenson.
Not so much a question, more of a comment, if that's allowed. I'm really grateful to hear an officer describe the social model of disability, and to hear that we're being proactive about helping disabled people manage in this frightening pursuit that we call life. As someone who's recently been, well, I am disabled, neurodiverse. As soon as I leave the front door, I'm terrified. And, you know, because of sensory overload and noises and smells and whatnot, given that I'm autistic, it's a very scary world, and anything that we can do to help people like myself manage life more easily is sound by me. And I think if we are going to consult people across Worcester, then we've got places like the Myriad Centre, people with physical disabilities who have told me in the last couple of months, because I've been to the Myriad Centre, that they, you know, the social model of disability, they're disabled by their environment. And so anything we can do as a planning authority, as a nice bunch of people, is going to be well appreciated by people like myself, who are neurodiverse and neurodivergent, and people who have physical disabilities. And to finish up, I just Googled the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy for the Council, and I really ought to know it inside out, of course, but I don't. You know, it's quite a few pages long, and diversity is mentioned 42 times, but neurodiversity isn't. Now, that might just be a bee in my bonnet, but I do think, given that the increasing, it's not a criticism, by the way, because I presumably stuck my hand in there and voted for this, so it's on me as well. I think, given the increasing awareness of neurodiversity, I think we could perhaps reflect that in our strategy when it comes up for renewal. So the strategy is one thing, but of course the strategy is only worth the practical differences that it ends up making. So I hope that's not me being on my pedestal. This means a lot to me. It's taken over my life the last 2 years outside of council, but I'm just one voice. To hear you talk about having a conference and getting partners involved is music to my ears, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence, and I absolutely echo everything you've just said, so thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Denham.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, that sounds really exciting. You know, I think the councils, we've achieved a great deal with our equality, diversity and inclusion strategy so far in many ways. And I think, you know, the systematic approach that officers have taken is really helpful. And if, you know, and to move it to the next phase, you know, I've been passionate over the years, as many people know, in terms of access able and, you know, the mapping of the physical accessibility to our public venues. So, you know, to expand and to build on that work, yeah, really looking forward to sort of being part of that and contributing to it. If I can just flag up, because you mentioned a lot of things, but as chair of Worcester Dementia Action Alliance, dementia-friendly communities, dementia-friendly facilities, if I can kind of put that on the radar and the agenda, and telephone access. So people living with dementia, and I guess many other people, find the kind of automated telephone systems really challenging and really difficult. You know, press a number for this, press a number for that. As soon as they hear a voice, some people think they're talking to a person, you know, and you've got to have quite higher intellectual functions to actually cope with some of the telephone choice mechanisms and to get to where you want to. And I think, you know, often people are just, well, it's another barrier to access in it, and one, so again, to kind of put that on the radar and to look at would be useful. But yeah, good stuff.
Councillor Wilmore.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much of a question, but more of an invitation to all members of the committee that one of the ways that in health that we talk about EDI is equality, diversity, inclusion and belonging, because Worcester belongs to all of us. And by embarking on this piece of work, we're inviting scrutiny. And I think sometimes that can feel a little bit unnerving, but it's really healthy. And so as we engage more with our key partners, we might be hearing things that maybe we think doesn't reflect on the City Council very well. But I think it's just an invitation to have a really open mindset about the journey that this project might take, and to embrace the information that we will get back from our partners in a really constructive and positive way, and to not be maybe defensive about things that we might hear that we didn't necessarily want to hear.
Any other questions? Councillor Kinnersley, then Councillor Cochrane.
Thank you, Chair. So just to, again, echo other people's comments about how great it is to hear about this project, is that then going to feed through into the scorecard in other ways? At the moment, there's the number of premises and events with an access guide, which doesn't feel somehow to kind of reflect the kind of the breadth and the ambition of the project. Does that mean that, will that come through in different ways in the scorecard?
Through you, Chair. Yes, thank you. I think that's a very fair question, and it's a little bit like some of our other strategic work. What do you start measuring? I think what we'd want to do is bring to the July committee a report about these strands, and an invitation to agree the first few priority projects, and then be getting on with that whilst trying to agree, as I said, what do we already do? What do we think we could do better? Because if we want to set ourselves some target to do some things better already quite quickly, then we can put those on the scorecard. Other things would probably just inform the next iteration of the scorecard, I suspect, when we know better where we are trying to get to. So it's sort of a little bit of both, but I think as a sort of high level outcome, I think the key milestones for this first year would be to, as I said, establish what we do already and we can do better, learn from others, build networks, work on a few focus projects and convene a conference. So I can itemise those and we can hold ourselves to account for those. And then I think probably then the following year is about seeing the changes that makes. As a group of consultees, for example, we don't get probably enough responses, and that is probably on us as much as on consultees, but we don't get enough responses from people who've got something really interesting to tell us about their experience with accessibility. So even a simple measure like X percentage of responses on the survey identified a specific access need, that would also be an additional indicator. So yes, we can definitely firm those up as we go through.
Councillor Cochrane.
Thank you, Chair. Just brief comment that very happy to hear about that programme and the open, flexible approach that you're taking to it. So I think that's really valuable. I had two kind of questions, issues, one relating to the rough sleeper KPIs and the other active travel. In terms of the rough sleeper KPI that is suggested here, well, two that are suggested here, I had some concerns about the number of rough sleepers supported into accommodation during the quarter, which sounds a bit odd because obviously that's what we want to do, so it seems obvious that we should measure it. Having said that, what we've heard from MAGs when they're giving presentations and so on is that getting rough sleepers into accommodation is extremely complicated and takes a long time, and it's not a predictable sequence of events to get people into sort of a sustained housing situation. So I'm concerned that with that KPI that either it won't really tell us anything, because you might come back saying this quarter, say nobody has been helped into accommodation. Is that good or bad? That might be good, meaning lots of work has been done and people are moving towards that but haven't achieved it yet. Or it might be that having a target for that actually means that the focus is on the low-hanging fruit, people who are easy to move into accommodation and not the people who are entrenched and actually more vulnerable. So could having that target actually either create a focus on the less vulnerable or just not tell us really anything useful? I did have a look at some of the data that's kind of out there, and I had no idea that the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities has an interactive dashboard which includes rough sleeping data on Worcester City, and you can unfortunately its data only goes up to June 2023 for some reason. I haven't. You might be able to tell me why. But they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different metrics there. So number of people sleeping rough on a single night in that month, of which how many are new, of which currently sleeping rough who have rejected an offer of off-the-street accommodation. So that, I won't go through them all, but there's quite a few there, which obviously would be far too many for us to be considering. But I did wonder whether one of those, which clearly we are collecting that data already because we're sending it to DLUC, might give us more information about how we're doing, or perhaps maybe more importantly for us to spot a trend that something bad is coming, and that we need to take action. So for instance, if there's a spike in new people being on the street, then maybe something is going wrong, and that's an early warning for us. So I did just wonder whether there might be some other metric that helps us to understand what's going on the streets. Welcome your views on my comments, and can I come back to the active travel in a moment?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think what probably recognises that we've debated this a few times. I think we've reported various different performance indicators through committee, and then probably subsequently recommended their removal, as it hasn't necessarily told us what we'd hope it to tell us. The two new proposed performance indicators are performance indicators that we report through to DLUC. So the intention was to try and match those up with what we do already report and we are monitored on, which we felt were probably the most appropriate to, like you say, there's lots of other performance indicators that we do report through, but trying to keep it succinct, because if we report new rough sleepers, that still leads a question about more entrenched rough sleepers. So trying to not provide lots of different breakdowns of that cohort of individuals. So the number of people sleeping rough on a single night, I think, is very much a metric that we want to capture. We have an annual count once a year, which tells us a sort of point in time of numbers of rough sleepers. But the quarterly figure will help break that down in terms of trends of what that's looking like. And then number of rough sleepers supported into accommodation is a priority for us. It is an area of work that we want to improve upon. Although we've set a target, that's based on comparative data, so we wouldn't be looking at, well, we've got to our target and then we don't need to do anything more for the rest of the quarter. It is very much about trying to get as many people as we can into accommodation, and that will be the sort of figure that we're reporting through. There are lots of challenges about getting people into accommodation for a whole host of reasons, like you said. We heard from Max, previous committee here. So I'm happy to change that if members wish. We've tried to sort of make those the two most relevant from those that we report through to DLUC, but I'm not specifically precious about which ones we do capture.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree that, like, putting too many metrics before us, would probably raise more questions than it answers. And yeah, I don't know that the new rough sleepers is necessarily the right second metric to have. My suggestion of that was based on the thought that, as a one would be, it might identify a trend that we're not happy with, and that might trigger us to think whether we need to be doing something more. But also that if your total number of rough sleepers is the same but your new is more, then the implication of that is that some of the old ones are now not rough sleeping. Yeah. So without having a target, we can see that there is movement, there's flow through that. But it's obviously if it's the figures for June 23 was 11, and then one of which was new. So if then it becomes, if it's still 11 but there's 3 new, then the entrenched sleepers have reduced. That was kind of like my thinking behind kind of like suggesting that one. But I guess if you're collecting this data anyway, then as we go through the year, if you are seeing some trends, then perhaps we can hear about it, because obviously you're seeing that data and uploading it to DLUC. So it'd be quite useful, I think, to have that flexibility that, if you think there's something that is useful for us to put our eyes on, that can be brought to our attention.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of data around homelessness and rough sleeping more generally, so we can always provide a specific report focusing on the outcomes for rough sleeping. So I'm more than happy to take that approach. The other point I was just going to come back to was the data in terms of the lagging data that's reported through DLUC. So that's because of the sort of verification process that they go through. So the data that they'll always refer to is 6 months old at any point. So we're always working 2 quarters behind on the data that's published. So although it is readily available, it is out of date. So it doesn't necessarily give the current picture in Worcester.
Thank you very much. And yes, so the other matter that I just wanted to bring up was about the active travel. So obviously we've got kind of major construction projects, but then there are a number of other areas that the active travel steering group have been monitoring, and I wonder whether some metric related to the work that's going on there might be helpful to come to this committee. As I say, the construction projects are to a large extent out of our hands in the sense that they are county projects, but the active travel steering group has looked at you know, things that City Council can influence more related to like City Council staff. So for instance, you know, there was a survey of staff's use of active travel. So I would certainly be interested to note trends or to have targets for, you know, the proportion of commutes that are by active travel, so we can see whether that is changing over time, and you know, are our projects to encourage staff to actively commute working.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Really good point. And we have an active travel action plan, which the working group has been overseen and has reported. Will report back to this committee on a 6-monthly basis. And we've done some work, haven't we, in that group, looking around metrics. And I think that's something that could be usefully pursued a little bit more. The Beryl Bike scheme will be launching shortly, and there's some metrics within the contract for that as well. So we could look at those in that steering group, and then bring those back in the 6-monthly reports to this committee.
Is perhaps the best time to talk about this steering group to sort out the constitution of that now? There's been a change in the committee. Okay, so do you want to? Yeah.
So to remind members that the active travel steering group has been very useful working with officers to oversee the active travel work that the council's been doing, and the action plan. That's been previously chair and vice chair and cross-party representation. So I've had some discussion with chair and vice chair before the meeting. And we thought now would be an opportune time to, Chair, did you want to ask members now if anybody else would like to sort of put themselves forward for that?
Is there anybody who wants to be involved in that steering group?
Okay.
So, is that? We've got myself, Chair, Vice Chair, Councillor Kimberley, Councillor Murray.
I'm just checking, will the same team that were on it still be on it, or do you want us to volunteer from scratch?
I think we need to volunteer from scratch, really, don't we? Yeah.
So yeah, through you, Chair. If we have a new chair and vice chair of the committee, it would be helpful for members to volunteer, and I think it's for chair and vice chair to think about sort of political balance on that group, perhaps to take those volunteer names away and come back with that.
Can we come back to, if that's okay with you? Yeah, we'll come back. Okay.
And through you, Chair, so we'll liaise, and officers will set up a meeting over the next few weeks.
Any other questions at all? Oh, Councillor Kimberley.
Very selfishly, and a rookie question just for me, just to understand, because all of the key PIs are fairly clear and fairly straightforward to understand. The only one I'm just trying to get my head around is young people mental health support, exactly what that's quantifying, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Chair, I'll happily pick that one up. So that was reported on as part of the Q4 report, Councillor Kimberley. So the District Council have provided some money for young people's mental health support, both in sort of comprehensive older school setting and younger school setting. So it's just to support children and families with mental health challenges. So that's a project that will continue from last year into this year, and you'll get a quarterly report on it.
Any other questions at all? Okay, so I think it's just the recommendation that the Health and Wellbeing Committee considers the proposed content of the Health and Wellbeing Performance Scorecard for 24-25. Yeah, thank you. So next we're moving on to agenda item 8, Household Support Fund Tranche 5 allocation.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I just wanted to give a brief sort of update. I mean, for a chance to read the report, I won't go through it all, I won't read it all through, but just to kind of give you a breakdown of what we decided to spend. As you know, as you've heard from TAB and earlier, we've got an additional tranche, half-a-year tranche of Household Support Fund running until the end of September this year. this decision was made to spend it in similar kind of ways as we've done previously, just based on the fact that we had a very quick turnaround to try and get things out. So we're trying to use existing mechanisms to sort of get the money out to the people who need it the most as quickly as possible. So spend will be fairly similar to before. We've got an allocation going to our DWAS, our discretionary, I say this all the time and I can't say it now, our discretionary welfare assistance scheme. So that's to, oh, sorry, hang on. So 43,000 is going to DWAS for the next 6 months. There'll be £40,000 going towards the food bank, 47,500 going to supermarket vouchers for school and college students. So these are for free school meals during the school holidays for children or college-age children and nursery-age children that don't qualify for the free school meals under the county scheme. Spend to save grants. These are grants that are there are grants instead of loans that are offered to people who are struggling with homelessness to try and either cover rent, utility bills, pay rent in advance if they're moving into social housing, or perhaps support for a deposit if they find private rented accommodation. Citizens advice, there's 11,000 going to citizens advice, as Anne mentioned earlier, to fund their sort of general core services, and this additional drop-in to make sure that continues for the next 6 months. And then we've got an element for administration costs to support the delivery of each of those schemes. We are fortunate enough within Worcester, we've also got the UK SBF fund, which was agreed earlier January at this committee, which initially was used for the course of the 12 months. What we've decided is that we will, because we've now got the household support fund until September, that we'll push that back and use that in the second half of the year. So still the same allocation, but just try and spread it over the 12 months. So we've got more provision across the course of the 12 months. And is there any questions?
Any questions, anyone? Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no disagreement from me about where the money's been allocated. I mean, it's an emergency fund, and I presume everyone wants to see that fund continue, but we are where we are, and perhaps a general election will change things in terms of sustainable funding. So my point really isn't about that. It's more about the purpose of this discussion, because this has been presented to P&R. So first question is, were the allocations decided at P&R on the 21st of May? And on the 10th of June, in this room now, are we able to, if we wanted to, challenge any of the allocations? Now, I'm not going to do that, but someone else might be looking at the figures going, I would think more money should go to the food bank. Could anyone do that, or is it a fait accompli, P&R have made their minds up?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So Managing Director's urgency powers were used for this decision. And that was in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of P&R and this committee at the time, I believe. What we have to do constitutionally is report that decision back to P&R. So it's not a decision for them, it was simply the decision of the MD was reported back to them. And we just felt it was right and proper to report back to Communities Committee and this community as well. To inform you of the decision. I think if members wanted to have a debate this evening, it would be a debate that perhaps points officers in the direction of how to spend any future allocation, but certainly there's no ability to be able to change the decision that's already been made.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So open the floor then. What we're going to do in the future?
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check that I've understood correctly. So the first table is the allocation from 23-24, and Food Bank got £100,000. Am I right in thinking that this year they're getting allocation from two separate funds, and the total they will receive will be £90,000? So so 40,000 now from the HSF and the 50,000 delayed to the second half of the year from the UK SPF. Is that correct? So I'm right in thinking that. So actually they're going to get less money. As need goes up, the money we can provide goes down, not through any fault of our own. Is that right?
Sorry, no, what I didn't mention also, so in addition to our allocation that we received from the county of 168,543, they also stipulated an additional 10,000 for each of the districts that had to go towards the food bank. So the food bank will be getting the same as it did last year in total. Sorry, that wasn't clear.
Any other questions at all? Councillor Denham.
I declare an interest in being one of the people that signed it off, and part of the reason for doing that early in the year is that this money is only for 6 months, and if it is not spent within those 6 months, then the government will haul it back. So it's partly to sign off the expenditure as soon as possible within the 6 months, and also to make sure the funding was available for the school holidays, isn't it, and the holiday hunger. So that's the kind of logic behind it and doing it. And I think it's worth making the point that this council does provide that extra support, and this is a council that still has discretionary welfare assistance scheme, and that some of us have kind of fought over the years to retain that when some of our neighbouring councils cut it. When you talk about austerity and cutbacks, it is kind of austerity for whom, for the council or for our citizens. So I'm kind of proud that we have retained that. It is appalling, the level of need, but within Worcester City, we've tried over the years and recently with how we're using the Household Support Fund and UK SBF to do the most that we can to retain a safety net for those that are struggling in Worcester with the cost of living.
Thank you, Councillor Denham. I've just got one quick question, if I could, just so I can understand. In terms of the allocation of funding, what do we have back? I mean, this is all absolutely really important work, but what do we have back in terms of feedback to know the number of people that these organisations are seeing and helping, just so we know that when this money ends, how many people are going to be affected and are going to potentially lose out and be left in a bit of a mess? So have we got any numbers at all?
So we've got numbers for the last 23-24, which are in the report for the number of households assisted, and what I'm quite keen to do is to make sure we get those numbers back for this year as well, for that same reason. Partly because we've got stipulations within the grant funding as to what we need to spend, where we need to help and where we need to assist people, but also, as you say, to be able to see where that gap is and what we need to fund that going forward. Yeah.
So follow up with that, that's really good. So, but this money ends in September, the Household Support Fund. Are you getting any feedback and figures as we go along? Because when we come to September now, I don't want an organisation to go, oh, we didn't spend it all, and we could have reallocated that to somebody else. So are you getting any figures as you're going along?
Yeah, so as part of the grant stipulation, we're doing a mid-term review, so 3 months is what they're requesting. So we'll be doing the 3-month review to get the figures back from them, and then sort of checking that they're sort of on track and on target to spend. And obviously the money that we spend internally on, for example, DWAS, our spend to save, and the extra free school meals, we can get those as and when we do them and get sort of more of a monthly basis.
So will we have something for the next meeting of this committee, do you think, or is that too soon? I'm just worried about the next meeting after July is, I think, September, so that's when it's all going to end, isn't it? So I'm just worried about that we could know that it's all going ahead well.
Could I do a briefing out when I get the midterm report?
Sorry, Chair, absolutely. So we can provide an all-member briefing note on uptake of household support funding. But I was just looking back to the scorecard. I didn't know whether there was anything on there that we could also try and include within one of the projects or the KPIs there. So I'm sure we can do it via a number of routes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking that, you know, if money's not being, I can't believe for one instance it's not going to be spent by one of these organisations, but if we are in that situation, that we want to make sure that it's then reallocated so it doesn't go back to the government and it is used. That's my concern, really. I can't for 1 minute think that nobody's not going to spend it, but you never know. Any other questions on this? No, okay, in that case then, the recommendation is that the committee notes the contents of the report and in particular the use of Managing Director urgency powers in allocating the Household Support Fund Tranche 5 funding covering the period 1st of April 24 to 30th of September 2024 and notes that this matter was presented to Policy and Resources Committee on 21st of May 2024 in line with the Council's constitution. Is everybody happy to note? Thank you. And we now go on to any other business. Thank you all so much. Good night. Thank you.